Hi there everyone, it's Mrs. Thompson here. So today I'm going to be talking you through Resource 1, which is Reading Comprehension in your Home Literacy Unit. Just so you know, if you haven't already had a little look, that Resource 1 on Reading Comprehension is a little close reading passage about two characters called Martha and Flynn, and they are discussing their thoughts and feelings about school. So when you're ready, you can go in and you can have a little look and you can have a little read. It's not too long, but there's enough in there to really test your reading comprehension skills. So what does that mean? Well, this reading comprehension passage is going to test your skills on two key things, and that's two different types of questions: retrieval questions and inference questions. And that is our learning intention for you, but at the end of today, that you'll be able to tell the difference between the two things, between a retrieval question and an inference question. Now, just before we start, I want you to stop and have a little think. How confident are you when I say those terms to you? If when I say them, you understand them straight away, you know what a retrieval question is, you know what an inference question is, you can give yourself a thumbs up. If you're not sure, you think you might have an idea, but you're not completely sure, it might be a thumb to the side. And you know what, if you've got no idea at all, that's no problem. That's what we're here to do today. You can give it a thumbs down. You don't have to tell anybody else you've done that. It's just so you yourself have got a sense of where you sit and what you already know before you start the lesson. So just before we jump in, I think it might be helpful for you to think about as well, what does it actually mean when we say you're reading to comprehend or you're doing a comprehension exercise? And essentially what it means is we're looking to see that you can understand what has been said in the text. And as you move up through the school, we give it a slightly different name, actually, this skill. We start calling it something called RUE, and that's R-U-A-E. And each letter stands for something slightly different. So we have R, which is for reading. We have U for understanding. We have A for analysis. And we have E for evaluation. And all that really means is that we really want you to learn the skills of being able to say what it is you have read, how well you think the writer is able to get across their ideas, and of course, think about how the writer actually does that in the first place. So today's lesson on reading comprehension and on retrieval and inference questions are both kinds of understanding questions. They're both really getting you to think about what the writer has been saying. And so it's the first level of those ladder of skills that you're going to be looking at and building on over the next few years. So let's think a little bit more then about those retrieval and inference questions, because this is the key part of this little passage you're going to read. We'll look at retrieval questions first. They are explicit questions. And what do I mean by that? That's a bit of a wow word you might not understand. But it really just means that the answer should be quite clear. And once you've found it, that there really shouldn't be much doubt. It should be clear to you that this is the actual answer. And what retrieval simply means is to recover or to find. So this is about you going into the passage to recover or find some of those facts or some of those details that should be quite clear. And once you've found them, you can't really argue with them. You can see them there in black and white. And usually the questions that you are asked to help you go and find these retrieval type questions are the ones that begin with the W's or the last one, which is a how one. So we're looking at the what, when, where, who, and why questions. So that's what we're thinking about there for those explicit ones. And some people find those easy, but they can also be quite tricky. They're not always obvious. You have to read quite carefully to find them. The other type of question, which can be a little bit more difficult, is an inference type question. Now, the fancy wow word for that is these are implicit style questions, or they're looking for an implicit answer. And that just means that the answer is not quite as clear cut. You're having to do something else to find that answer. You're having to read between the lines. Your teachers say that a lot. What does it actually mean? Well, it means the answer might not be quite as obvious. You're going to have to look for clues. And for doing that, you might have to check the context or think about the bigger picture. So you're going to have to read around the section of the text that you've got. You might have to think about the whole paragraph to be able to work out the answer. And you might be working that out from things that you're told elsewhere in that little passage, or you might even be working out that answer by how you've been told those things in the passage. So it is just that little bit trickier. So a retrieval question, usually much clearer, more straightforward. You're going in to find information that you can clearly see or read in that passage. Implicit or inference questions, you're having to read between those lines and look for the clues. Now, that might all sound very well in practice, in theory, sorry, but what does it mean in practice? So I'm just going to briefly show you answering a retrieval question. So this is the text. As you can see, it's not too long. So if you haven't had a look at it yet in the book, there you go. You don't need to panic. This is it. And the first question that we're asked is, what does Finn think the year will be full of? Now, when I'm reading through, what I like to do is kind of underline when I'm looking for my answer. So I can underline my possibilities, and then I can go back and look at them and think, is that right? Is that what I want to use? So I'm going to read this one over with you just now. We'll have a look at how it would work. I can't wait for this year to be over, grumbled Finn. It's nothing but hard work and tests. That's not true, replied Martha. What about camp, the production, sports day, and the trips will go on. And I really like Mr. Basker. I bet he'll make it fun. You're right, retorted Finn, because it's easy to make fronted adverbials fun. Oh, you're so negative, sighed Martha. You need to have a positive attitude and a growth mindset. That's what Mr. Basker says. Easy for him to say. He doesn't have to sit the tests. I like being the oldest kids in the school, though. Exactly. Think about all the good things. And remember, this is all the stuff we did last year. We're just practicing now, ready for the big move up. Okay, so what does the Finn think the year will be full of? We're going to go back over, we're going to read it, and as we think we can find part of that answer, we're simply going to underline it so we've got it there to refer back to. So it says, I can't wait for this year to be over, grumbled Finn. So there's a little clue there already, because those words are some of the words that's in this question. What does he think the year is going to be full of? So that gives me a clue the answer might be coming next. It's nothing but hard work and tests. Now I'm going to pause there because there's two very clear things. Hard work, I'm going to underline that there, and tests. That's two things that he's told me that he is not happy about this year in school, that he thinks it's going to be about. So I double check that question. What does Finn think the year will be full of? It's nothing but hard work and tests. I wonder, is that quite clear? Seems to be. He's been pretty explicit. That means direct and giving us those details. So I'm going to underline them and keep them as my answer. Now what I might do next is read on and see if there's anything else that I think might also fit into that. And if there is, I'd underline those two. And then I'd make a decision. Am I going to use all of them, or am I going to only use some of them? I'm not going to finish that with you. I'm going to let you go back and look at it. But that's how straightforward it can be to do that answer. Read it through, underline what you think might be the possibilities, pick the ones that you want to include, and write it up in your answer. So there's an example of a retrieval question. Let's think a little bit more then about the inference question, reading between the lines. Now this question is, which year do you think these children are in and why? Now the reason I know that's an inference question is because we're not told anywhere in the passage what year they are in. So it can't be a retrieval question. I can't just go in and find that answer, underline it and pull it out. I'm going to have to read between the lines and see if I can work it out a little bit. And that means looking for clues. And if you remember what I said in the previous slide, that means looking at the whole paragraph here. We're probably not just going to get it from one line. So we're looking in clues in what we're being told, or perhaps how it's being said. So I'm going to read you through this and show you what I would do, which is pretty much the same as the last time. I'm going to underline or put a circle, if you prefer to do that, around the bits of the text that I think will help me answer that question, that will give me the clues. So, I can't wait for this year to be over, grumbled Finn. It's nothing but hard work and tests. Now I've underlined that because for me this is a little bit of a clue in terms of the way that he's talking. Who is it that says they've got hard work and tests? I teach all year groups and I know my older students don't really refer to tests so much. They start to talk about exams. So who do we think might talk about hard work and tests? I'm going to carry on. That's not true, replied Martha. What about camp, the production, and sports day? Now I've underlined those three things as well because I think that's another little clue. Where or who is it that has camp, production, and sports day all in one year when they're in school? Can you think when that might be? And the trips will go on. And I really like Mr. Basker. I bet he'll make it fun. Yeah, right, retorted Finn, because it's so easy to make fronted adverbials fun. Oh, you're so negative, sighed Martha. You need to have a positive attitude and a growth mindset. That's what Mr. Basker says. Easy for him to say. He doesn't have to sit the tests. I like being the oldest kids in school, though. And you'll see I've underlined again, because here's another clue. I like being the oldest kids in school. So what does that tell us about where these children might be and how old they might be? Exactly. Think about all the good things and remember this is all the stuff we did last year. We're just practicing now, ready for the big move up. And I've underlined that too, big move up. So these kids have got a move coming up. What do we think they're moving from and to? Now, there you go. These are the skills in answering an inference question. We're thinking about how things have been said to work out how old these children are, and we're thinking about the details that they've told us in order to make an estimate about what we think this answer might be. And more importantly, as you can see, we've underlined bits from throughout the passage, not just one line, that will help us to work that out. So that just leaves it for you to answer that question. Which year do you think these children are in and why? So you can give your answer and then just offer an explanation. I think this because. Okay, it's your turn to have a go. We've talked it through. We've talked over what an explicit question is. So a retrieval question is. That's a question where we've got a clear, direct answer that we can go in and find. And we've also thought about those inference questions or implicit questions, ones where we have to read between the lines. Now I'm wondering, at the beginning you gave yourself a thumbs up, a thumbs to the side or a thumbs down. What would you give yourself now? Do you understand the difference? If you think, yeah, you know what, I really do now, you can give yourself a thumbs up. If you're still not completely confident, you could give yourself a thumb to the side. And you know what, if this still makes no sense, you can give yourself a thumb down. If you haven't understood it, there's a few things you can do. You could watch the video again, see if it helps. Or you could ask somebody else, a teacher or a support assistant, could they come with you and talk it through and see if that can help to make it a little bit more clear. But the other thing you can do is just give it a try, because sometimes these things don't actually make sense until you give them a go. You have to give it a go, sometimes get them wrong, and then start to get them right. And it's only by getting them wrong and then building up your confidence and starting to get them right that you can start to think, actually, I really get it. It's a little bit like driving a car. Someone tells you what to do, and it makes sense for so much of your time in your head, but then when you get in the car and you try to do those things, put yourself into gear, check your mirrors, it just doesn't quite work. But still, the only way to get better, the only way to drive the car is to put the key in the ignition and get started. So there's your choices. You can either watch it again, talk it through with somebody else, trusted adult, teacher or an assistant, or you know what, you could just go ahead and give it a go. Looking to go above and beyond, remember, attempt that final challenge, which gives you the chance to compose your own retrieval and inference questions and to answer them. Because the evidence shows that if you're able to apply those skills, teach them to someone else, think about them in a way that would allow you to show somebody how you do it, well, that's the way that the deepest learning happens. So don't shy away from it. You want to push yourself, go above and beyond, and do those final challenges as well. Thanks for listening, folks. Hope this has helped. You have been looking at the help video for Resource 1 on retrieval and inference questions. All that's left to be said is good luck.